You thought you were off the hook, didn't you? No?
In fact, I might start with having received a letter from Simpson Grierson now, just updating you on what that says.
Oh,
so
okay,
that it's
thank you.
covered off and done. So they've looked at it under section 101A, whether it complies to the draft financial strategy of the Local Government Act 2002. And the key paragraph, paragraph 4, on this basis, in our opinion, the strategy addresses all the requirements of section 101A, but with a reservation about compliance with section etc., particularly in relation to the subsidiaries of Christchurch City Holdings Limited. Although important in the context of the proposals for the release of capital, this is a relatively minor matter to rectify by additional wording in the table of council investments. Similarly, we might have expected a clearer statement of the impact of capital release on current rate levels. So those were the only aspects that they wanted us, and I see them as technical
And so you
corrections
could
to the document.
fix those with that advice. That's
right.
great.
Yeah, under the
Under the
resolution
amendment.
of
Yeah.
the CFO.
Good. Andrew.
Thank you. Two questions, if I may. The first one relates to that clause that we've just been talking about there, 6.1.5. This clause is obviously intended to relate to technical aspects only. What do you see the scope of that being, and what's an example? I mean, we've just had an example of where it would be used. How far-reaching could that clause be in terms of making changes after this meeting?
I think that's a very good question, and one I don't have a clear answer to, because the resolution might also say something like non-material, but again, you're saying into the same definitional aspect. So what is non-material? It really is, in my mind, to align things such as engineering infrastructure strategy may not be inflated and audit office say that needs to be the exact same figures as in the financial strategy, so you need to update and review. They might come in and assess a accounting policy treatment or a starting or closing position that is slightly out, and we need to roll that through to the extent that a different proposal is approved today. All of those numbers and all the flow through for all of the documents, of which there are around 2,000 pages, will need to be reviewed, rechecked and redone. So it's those type of aspects, but they are, in my mind, technical and mechanical, not material, but it's very difficult to put a definition around that.
But a classic one would be the example that you've just given, which would be the legal advice, which may in fact be backed up by the audit office, that we need to have a little bit more information than financial strategy about the flow on impact of selling assets on the income of the council.
That is exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And the second question, just wanting to drill down into the 398 million, which is noted on page 11. And I certainly take the comments that David Adamson has made already in regard to that. That figure comes out of the 3-year plan. Has this figure not been able to be updated further as a result of changed expectations since the 3-year plan was put together, or work that's been done? What level of certainty is there around that, and where does that sit? If there isn't the certainty, why isn't there, and could something be done to firm it up a little bit? So
I'd refer you to page 5 of the financial strategy, or page 11 of the agenda, the council agenda, and the second paragraph under capital expenditure. So what we're talking to in this space is that uncertainty and where the 398 has come from, and the requirement for us at this point in time with the base of knowledge to use the information we have available. So what we are saying is we've provided a further 398 of cost associated with the horizontal infrastructure program, the final costs of which will become known once the independent assessment is released later this year. This will then need to be discussed with the Crown. So it is clearly stated that the level of required horizontal infrastructure spend is a key uncertainty. So it is a key uncertainty. We don't know at this point. And it also clarifies what some of the implication of that might be. So if the level of spend is higher than expected, higher than what the base position was, and the removal of the 398 savings to be found, then the impact to ratepayers is 0.25% increase in rates over 2 years for every 10 mil of additional borrowing that's required for that. So I guess all I'm doing is reinforcing the discussion that we've already had from on the infrastructure strategy and with David around the uncertainty in this space. We just don't know. We have to go with the information we have, and as things become clearer, we'll know the implications.
And given the need for certainty in other areas, is the auditor comfortable with that level of uncertainty in this area?
Because we're using the best information we can, and we're clearly stating the uncertainty and the implication of that uncertainty, and we have funding for that additional 398 to the extent that we get there, they're comfortable with that position.
Yep. Yanni?
Although I wouldn't like to speak on their behalf, I must say. I'm not here as Audit New Zealand.
No, it's all right.
But I think the language that was used, the best info we have, I'm struggling to understand how the best info we can have is like 2 to 3 years out of date. Surely we have updated figures on that 398.
I think this is revisiting the discussion you've already had on the horizontal infrastructure.
So I just can't comprehend that. I'm sorry, but so that's it. So we use the 398. Can I just check? When we had the informal, we asked for some alternative options to be included, and in the financial strategy, there's no. On 5, page 15, you assume that there's 17% rates increase if we don't release 750 from CCHL. Likewise, in option B, you assume a 37% rate increase, but there's no mention of deferring capital expenditure, which was one of the things we asked for. So have you done any work on those alternative options, and can we get some alternative options in here that actually are credible in terms of the combination of levers that you identify at the start?
For me to be able to ask for an option to be produced around capital release, I need specificity on the capital that will be released, the time frame, the profile and the program. The reason for that, as we've discussed both in the financial strategy and infrastructure strategy, is the interlinkages between all of the levers. In particular, within the capital program, the asset management plans, the levels of service that are being created, the operational expense, the depreciation expense, they all map to what particular capital asset is deferred or delayed. For example, if it was a pool that wasn't being built, then it might have differential implications on OPEX as opposed to if it was pipes that wasn't repaired. And I would refer you through to the deferred renewals section of the financial strategy, which also talks about our extent to defer renewals has been decreased because of the large increase in repair costs and operating costs if we pull it back too far. So it sounds like an easy request, but unless I have specificity around the profile of the capital that's stopped, as we can see from the profile, it can't be deferred, would need to be removed, I cannot run that scenario. What I have been able to do with these scenarios is point out that under certain circumstances, if you are reducing the capital release lever, then you need to increase the rates lever. It's just that interrelationship.
I think that's for the purposes of this, and I think the resolution that I've put up, requires us to revisit the capital program, and we will be, essentially doing that. I think the timing of this, Peter, was that last year when we looked at the financial strategy at the beginning of December, we didn't really, well, I can speak for myself, I didn't have a clear understanding that we had to solve for zero. So being in the position where that is now clearly understood, we perhaps would have looked at the capital program with a slightly different lens if we'd known that we were solving for zero. So this isn't the end of the line, and I sort of kind of repeat this for councillors. This is a process where we go out to consult with our communities. They might have some views about taking things off the capital program that we will need to take into account. So all of these things will be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. But what Peter's saying is that he can't legally put something in a document as savings to be found, and we've just had a conversation about the last person who put $398 million on our budget as savings to be found. Yanni.
That's no different than the argument of releasing 750 capital from CCHL. We don't know which companies it's coming from. We don't know what percentages or what we can get when we go to sell
That's
it
right.
off.
And
So, you know,
but we
it's the
can
same.
confirm that we are obtaining that money. That's what we're confirming that we are going out for. So, I mean, that is completely different from saying that we will save money, that we won't spend money that we've already put on the budget. So, look, I'm not going to have a debate about it. You can raise it in debate if you want to, but I'm not going to debate it in questions. Have you got another question?
Yep. Thanks. So we also asked on page 4 that it was made explicit the cost of the anchor projects for the total project costs to council, including highlighting the ongoing operational and etc. So we haven't had an updated table on 2C, which to understand what the costs are and what the assumptions are. So there are projects that we wanted added to that list, and there were also getting the true costs so that the community could make informed submissions. So when can we get that information, and can we include that in here?
So you're asking around the section 2C on page 4 and those specific activities, okay? And you want them separated out from the current depreciation, usage life, operational cost that we do from every single asset within the council business?
Yeah,
Because I do believe most of that information is already contained within the documents that have been sent to you.
Yeah, it's just that, like the bus exchange, depending on who owns it, would have an impact on depreciation and operation.
Yeah, which means, which you've already heard Peter say, that for the purposes of planning, we've assumed is in private ownership with council operations. So it is, that's the assumption that's been made for planning purposes. If that changes, and it will be known by the time we get to the end of this process, we will know who owns it because it will be open.
Okay,
Better
and just
be.
the final question from me is in regards to the stadium. It's on the budget currently, in the budget in the year 2022. So what's the impact of having that in the 25-26 year? Because my understanding was that's what we'd asked for, that it.
Well, we've got to build it if we're going to have it operating in the 25-26 year.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So we start building it and preparing for building it in 2022 is my understanding.
The rationale previously was to put the budget out by 10 years, not bring.
Yeah, but it's the operational
so-
budget. It will start operating, and it was to move the capital expenditure to beyond our sort of red zone, to use a phrase that's popular here, time frame. So it's to move the capital expenditure out, and the OPEX doesn't start till 2025-26. Is that right?
That sounds right without referring back to the documents.
But in terms of the financial benefit, moving it 3 years and putting it into 25-26 to start it later, that's got what sort of impact?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. That would be the stadium starting obviously in 2028. So that wasn't a request that was put to me.
Right. But we don't have any certainty because of the business case around that anyway. So we can't
But
really
that's okay. I mean, I think that's not relevant to this. Jimmy, and then Phil.
One question. On page 31, the table forecast dividend income outlined below. Because I still concern this figure, if in 2015-16, if a council release of partial capital for $549.3 million, so dividend is $46 million. Then if it, in 2016 and 17, if the council release for another $200 million, then will dividend drop to the $25 million. Then if we compare the other year, 2017-18, it will be only $23.6 million. I'm a particular concern that our main purpose, if we release of the partial capital, try to seek in the strategic partners to increase the productivity or running the business more effectively and more efficiently. But looks like the dividend is not increased a lot, actually a little bit drop. So this kind of trend will increase the ratepayers' the burden rather than ease their burden. This is my particular concern. So I'm not sure where this forecast figure come from.
Okay. Quite a detailed question, sir, so I'll try and answer it in chunks. The big releases in 15-16 and 16-17 obviously are the 549.3 and the 200.9 that are included in the footnotes below. So those are the, if the proposal goes through to sell, that is the sale of those aspects of it. That impacts upon the dividend streams, which then flows through. As you've noted, those dividend streams are based on current projections. They're given from CCHL, and they are necessarily, because of that point, do not include any potential uplift or upside from strategic partners driving greater dividends or value through. That would be an upside potential, and we can't model that for conservatism purposes. The last point was around this creates rather than eases the burden on ratepayers. I think that's something that is probably more of a qualitative assessment from ratepayers themselves. There is detail in here around the returns that we currently get with respect to dividends, which is around, say, a 3% level versus I think it's 8 to 9% we talk about as being the return from those assets, including a capital increase. So those are the aspects that you then need to trade with the reduction in the debt and paying the interest cost on the debt of, say, around 6%. So that's probably, I think, the three elements of the question.
But we will get, if we do have a strategic partner that takes over or takes up with a shareholding with us and is able to improve the rate of return, then that will flow on into those figures to increase them.
That's right.
Yeah. Phil?
Peter, I just want to ask you about the insurance assumption. Like, clearly there's some big assumptions around the future capital program, which Council will look at, and the review of the horizontal infrastructure. And I'm aware, clearly there's sensitivity around the issue of insurance, but my understanding is that I just wanted this clarified, that in fact we've in effect had to build into our own costings any future insurance payments that Council would receive in addition to what we've already received. Is that the case?
Okay, let me talk as much as I can about insurance, and apologies if I don't go too far down the track and I leave the question unfulfilled, because I'll, in the back of my mind, be realising that insurers will be looking at this. The position we have reached with Audit Office around our assumptions on insurance have been approved by Audit. We've spent quite a lot of time with them. It's been based on our assessment of receipts, insurers' explicit views on what we may or may not be owed. I probably don't want to go any further than that. We do have within the plan assumptions of further receipts. What I don't want to talk to is whether there's any expectation that there might be a shortfall or a shortfall amount around that. But Audit Office and ourselves are comfortable that what we have in there represents similar to the last question, a fair but necessarily conservative view of insurance receipts going forward. Obviously, insurance receipts in totality will only be resolved through negotiation, litigation, resolution with insurers over time. And even the profile and the timing and receipt of that is not something that we can unilaterally decide upon.
So our financial position will improve if, in fact, that conservative position is
if we do better
bettered.
than currently in the plan, yes.
Yeah, good.
So Peter, just for me to clarify.
No,
so,
I really don't want any more
No,
about
no,
insurance.
it was just what's in the figures. I'm assuming from what Peter said that in fact there is some
I'd
sort of
rather
figures
not
already
talk to.
contained here.
I'd rather not talk about what we've got in the figures. In fact, with respect to what we are going to be saying about insurance, it will necessarily be opaque within the financial statements, even if it means an audit. Audit will raise a matter against that, because to be specific on the receipts or potential of any outcome would certainly undercut us in negotiation.
Yeah,
So
Thank
we're
you.
going to be very
Yeah.
opaque on the numbers.
thank you. All right, so the question is now is whether we debate the financial strategy now or should we break for lunch?
We've got Councillor Easters has to leave, so I would suggest we get on and debate. And
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, look, we'll just have a 5-minute break and we'll debate it in 5 minutes. Yep.